Greetings, Guardians, my name is Byfear. So, Kaitarakni's Facade is a fun little hunter exotic, but it's got some interesting lore that, well, it talks about the Elixni, that's for sure, but it also talks about another species. And I think this is going to be a problem. This is your early warning for potential arachnophobes. This is a video that contains theory, but it's not going to be theory you're going to like, and, well, I'm touching on some really uncomfortable topics for you lot, so yeah, sit this one out. It doesn't change the universe of Destiny so fundamentally, but, yeah, it is worth knowing, for anyone who doesn't have a phobia like that. So yeah, no, turn off if that is you. For the rest of us, let's talk a little bit about how things are going in the system and how certain creatures might be lurking on the moons of Neptune. The reality is that Destiny is full of a ton of mysteries that are linked to the outer depths of space. The further we get from the core planets of the system like Earth and Mars, the more room for mysteries there is. Whether it's the Aphelion, the Nine, the many truths of the system that the Drifter keeps on talking about, the planetoids out in the Kuiper Belt, the further we go out, the less we know. There has been a limited number of human surveys conducted in the days after the collapse, and the reasons for it are obvious. Sol has been war-torn for centuries at this point, and any kind of mapping is not only tricky, but in a constant state of flux, because, hey, terrain may belong to one faction or have one thing the next day, but all of that changes if a Cabal land tank rolls through, or if a fallen house decides to set up shop and create its own architecture. You kind of see what I mean? It's really tricky to keep a consistent idea of how Sol is. So survey teams aren't really the #1 priority so much as responding to the things in those areas. However, the citizens of Neomuna have made some surveys, and they've done so in particular of the moons around Neptune. In particular today we're going to be focusing on Neptune's moon of Thalassa, and yeah, this is where Kaitarakni's Facade comes in. Again, I absolutely love that name. Anyway, we get into a few speculative things here, but yeah, we start talking about things with many legs. And, they might well be spiders. I'm guessing that based on the name of the exotic. But anyway, yeah, let's read the lore of the exotic and let's explain where these spiders come in. Dumpster diving wasn't the classiest of hobbies, but it gave her insights she couldn't get anywhere else. At least, that's what she reminded her ghost as the two scoured the alleyways of Neomuna. The helmet had a lovely heft in her hands as she pulled it from a pile of expired tech and half-melted Vex. This was a rare find. Turns out people who live in a highly advanced virtual society also have an almost perfect waste disposal system. Almost. As she examined her prize, she spied something poking out from inside. She retrieved 5 yellowed sheets of actual paper covered in barely legible writing. Expedition 17, Thalassa. Unsatisfied with excursions on Neptune, I've begun to take my trips a bit further to its surrounding moons. Boring, she skipped ahead. Appears to be a conglomeration of space junk, long fused together. Deep blue, green, and yellow hues ripple across amalgamate hills. Too many big words. I do not appear to be the first visitor. She continued to skim. Ship wreckage. Old pieces of armor, coloring unlike anything I've ever seen. Not made for a human. Huh. The helm sure looked like it would fit. Large creatures. Many legs. Her eyes widened. Finally, it was getting good. She turned the page over. Nothing. Blank. With a scoff, she crumpled up the papers, tossed them over her shoulder, and stalked off with the helmet. Luckily for us, we do get the rest of the full expedition log in the actual lore reading of Kaitarakni's Facade, and that expedition log reads as follows in full. Expedition log number 17. Neptune's second closest satellite, Thalassa, Neptune's wilderness proved unsatisfying, so I've begun to take trips further out to surrounding moons. Equipment detected several chemical signatures. Samples should be plentiful. If readings are accurate, collected resources will help Neomuna greatly. Touchdown evaluation. Initial readings detect nominal quantities of phosphates and bountiful networks of framework silicates. Networks are jutting out from nearby caverns and visible to the naked eye. I cite novice oil painting skills to describe the network's hues as such: deep blue, green, and yellow. Note: cross-reference hue interpretation with paint tubes. I cite minimal creative writing knowledge to describe the landscape. The hues ripple across amalgamate hills that roll as far as the eye can see. Initial exploration. Came upon a shipwreck, very old, parts burnt out beyond recognition. Found items in nearby area. 1 armored glove, unusable, built for 3 digits, one of which appears to be opposable. 2 armored shin guards, simple design, both cracked. 1 helmet, visor intact. Observation. The armor is painted, markings unrecognizable but appear intentional. Hazard. Fauna observed at nearest cavern, large creatures, many legs, pincers. Having no experience in zoology, I conclude probably unfriendly. Discovered the unique pattern on the found helmet matches the coloring of the creatures. An attempted disguise? Sample collected. Framework, silicate, 2.2 kilos. Continued observations. Creatures are unfriendly. Attempted to collect more samples. Unknowingly encroached on territory. Theory. Helmet was indeed an attempted disguise. Perhaps I will utilize it as well. End documentation. So let's be clear, despite how clinical all of this is, it seems as though there is a certain degree of panic within the explorer who is taking all these notes. It's clinical and academical, but no one types in all caps many legs without being a little bit panicked. And so, I mean, I can understand why. I mean, you found alien life on a moon orbiting Neptune. There's definitely a perspective there for panic, but also that means we need to keep a few things in mind. This is a reason why we may potentially see things in this report exaggerated just a little bit. Panic is a thing, and it does lead us to make some over-assumptions or to exaggerate things that scared us, but having said that, I don't want to be the debriefing team from Weyland-Yutani that initially say the reports of alien life on the Nostromo are nothing, so yeah, we should investigate this, but without the intent of monetizing it. Okay, well, maybe. You know what? No, maybe I am Weyland-Yutani. Anyway, point is, let's start talking about what kind of alien life this is. There are some big, clear signs that there are Eliksni involved in this story. In particular, the items near the burnt-out wreckage tell us a lot. The armored glove, built for 3 digits, including a third one which is opposable, I mean, that really is our biggest clue. Take a look at these. The Eliksni, lo and behold, have 3 digits, one on each of their hands. One of them is even opposable. So yeah, we can say that the occupant of the shipwreck was potentially an Eliksni. The Cabal also have 3 digits on their hand, but it's one of those moments at which you need to take a look at Kaitarakni's facade for a closer hint. It looks very Eliksni, and it was also found at the crash site. This is one of those moments where you would recognize that a Cabal helmet would be much more militaristic and uniform, whereas this looks like fallen junker scrap. This is definitely something where the Eliksni seem to be involved. At very least, I believe that the ship that crashed was one of theirs. Probably not a ketch, but maybe. It's impossible to tell. But I would suspect maybe a skiff, given that the only 3 articles recovered were 2 shin pads and a glove, alongside, of course, Kaitarakni's facade itself. The ship is not the scary bit, though. The scary bit of the report is the next bit, when it reports large creatures, many legs, pincers. And here we have a problem. Let's look again at some of the concept art for the Fallen in a biological sense, and let's get a bit more clarification. So take a look at their mouth first. Let's focus on these things in their lower jaws. Yeah, Fallen have lower jaws, and these things could qualify as pincers, I guess. So that kind of fits, but the all caps many legs bit. Yeah, that's really worth talking about. Of course, Fallen have many limbs, having an extra set of arms, but the bit where it says many legs seems to be what's really concerning, because again, whilst the Fallen do scurry on all fours? all sixes, I guess. They're putting all 6 limbs on the ground at that point. Anyway, when they do scurry on all 6s, they are in a bit of a moving state, and they're not doing that all the time. However, this report doesn't say many appendages, which would have led us to believe that these are fallen. It says legs, and the fallen stand on 2 legs. So what's going on here? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything outside of Axis, the Archon Prime of the fallen devil splicers, as any kind of creature that had multiple legs, so it raises the question, did the Surveyor see the fallen, or did they see something else? I think the answer is revealed better by the latter part of the passage, and on the actual helmet of Kaitarakni's facades. The markings on the helmet are something that have been deliberately drawn on there. It's noted that the markings on the helmet also matched the creatures, and the theory of the Surveyor is that these markings were deliberately trying to match the creatures to act as a sort of disguise. And now we maybe get a better idea of what's going on here. This is not a single species, this is potentially 2 different species. The possible story one could piece together from all of this is that part of the great expeditionary fleet that left Reese travelled to Sol and crashed here. Regardless of whether it was a ketch or a skiff, the crash landing on the moon meant that the world of Thalassa had new visitors, and the local fauna, the many-legged creatures, noted that new ship that had landed, and thus ensued a conflict between Spider Pirate and Space Spider. A whole situation that I would have loved to see go down if only for the spectacle of it, but which undoubtedly would have been terrifying in the moment. This may have created a single fallen survivor, maybe a few of them, who tried their best to blend in by painting all of these spiders' markings on Kaitarakni's facade, and potentially adding extra optics, which might explain why the helmet looks fallen but has more than 4 eyes. Remember, the Fallen don't use a single set of eyes in their helmets, they have 4 eyes naturally. And so when you sit there and you actually look at Kaitarakni's facade, it is weird that it has 8 eyes. So yeah, maybe this is the reason for that. Maybe they were genuinely trying to blend in with the spiders or whatever else they might have found on Thalassa. And given that the last few bits and pieces we found of them were Kaitarakni's facade, the shin guards, and the gauntlet, I think it's fair to say that they failed. So yeah, it's not confirmed that it's spiders, but there is definitely something scary on the moon of Thalassa. But here's one last thing which I think we should talk about, which is simply, why is this found inside a dumpster? It's an open question, and there are a bunch of potential reasons as to why this might have been the case, but I think that's our real question for you guys in the comments section. Let me know what you think. As a little bit of an idea or two, I want to go ahead and throw my own theories out there. First of which, you might be able to sit there and indicate the idea that for Neomuna, this is indicative of the evidence that the powers that be might want to bury this report so as not to panic citizens. After all, if there are giant space spiders on Thalassa, as well as an unknown series of alien ships in the area, well, they definitely don't want that information going public. Equally, it might be an action of mercy towards this native mysterious fauna. After all, this may be the only record of it, and it may be harder to kill them if the forces of the Witness don't know that they exist. They're not necessarily sentient in the sense of being super intelligent like human beings just yet, but if they are spared, then there's every chance that their civilization could mature into something greater. And if that is going to happen, they need to not be wiped out by the forces of the Shadow Legion. So maybe this was dumped as a merciful act, allowing another species the chance at survival, even if humanity was potentially going to fall. I don't know if either of those are potentially correct, because there is no easy way to tell. All we know is that, well, Kaitarakni's facade was found in a dumpster in Neomuna, and, well, yeah, the notes were stuffed inside. Totally unsure what's going on there, but maybe there's more of a story there that you all can fit together. For the moment, though, I would stay away from Thalassa. I don't want to find out what happened to that crew, and, yeah, I don't know if anyone else does either. So yeah, let's stay away from the second moon of Neptune. Sounds like a bad idea. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. That's all for today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want more Destiny content, go ahead and hit subscribe, and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rodacia ad Astra. I'll see you Starside.